Welcome to the Sacred Dance Summit. I'm Leslie Zehr, author of The Alchemy of Dance, Sacred Dance as a Path to the Universal Dancer, and your host for this summit. My guest today is Carrie Konyha. Spirituality and dance have been a core inspiration in Carrie's life since she was a kid. Developing interests in the spiritual dimension of life and in dance as a child, Carrie's journey in movement began with gymnastics at the age of 5. Her inspiration in dance was her grandmother, who was a lifelong career acrobatic dancer for Ringling Brothers Circus. As for spirituality, Carrie's mother was her first teacher. Carrie says, "My mom was always into earth-based spirituality and esoteric arts and sciences. She began teaching me astrology and about the esoteric significance of the cycles and seasons of nature when I was about 9 years old. Being born with a natural gift for intuition and sensing energy, the early foundations in esoteric teachings shared with Carrie by her mother established a foundation for what would become her lifelong path as a spiritual guide, sacred wisdom teacher, and professional dancer." A longtime resident of Sedona, Arizona, Carrie has been working professionally as a psychic reader, spiritual teacher, shamanic healing practitioner, professional dancer, and dance teacher since 1986. Carrie was introduced to the idea of sacred dance in the early 1990s, which quickly became her primary modality for her own healing journey. Now Carrie is a leading expert in the realm of teaching and facilitating sacred dance practices. Carrie's formal dance training began as a child with gymnastics, ballet, modern dance, and spanned to include multiple decades of training in yoga, belly dance, classical Indian dance, and gypsy dance styles. She has taught and performed belly dance professionally throughout the USA since 1998. She's studied with many master belly dancers, has won multiple awards for her performances and teaching, and has performed with many famous musicians over the years. Hi, Carrie. Welcome to the summit.
Oh, thank you. Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Yes, it's good to see you again. Carrie and
You
I actually
too.
did meet several years, I don't even know how long ago
It's been a
that
few
was.
years. Yeah.
It seems like yesterday and it seems like forever at the same time. So,
Yeah.
but yes, we did meet face to face, and I did a workshop at your place, and it was a lovely experience. So
And
I'm
of
happy
course,
to.
yeah. And you have been an inspiration for me pretty much throughout my entire dance career. So look what I have right here.
Ah,
My version was originally a PDF download that I had printed out so I could highlight it.
very good.
But yeah, you've been a huge inspiration to me over the years, and I'm just super thrilled about our connection.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, I think we definitely share a similar view about dance.
Yeah.
So let's just, before we go forward, let's go back and just talk a little bit about how you got started in dance. What was you started gymnastics at an early age, but how did you get into that to begin with?
Well, on one level, I feel like I was just born to dance. I do have a memory of me being very, very small and using a table. I couldn't even walk yet, but I have a memory of pulling myself up using a table so I could dance. That was like my first movement memory. And my mother told me that I actually started walking by the time I was like 7 months old. And I think it was so I could dance. But
You didn't crawl, you didn't walk, you just danced.
I went straight to dancing. My mother loves dancing, but I think my first inspiration in dance was my grandmother on my father's side. She was the one, her and her sister were both classically trained in ballet, but worked as acrobatic dancers for Ringling Brothers Circus. And they also danced in vaudeville, because that was like that era when they were alive. And so when I was a kid, we had all of these photographs of my grandmother in all these acrobatic positions and her circus costumes. And my favorite pastime as a kid was to try to get into some of those poses and mimic her. She passed on when I was probably in about 3rd grade, but she was my first inspiration in dance. And as I said, I started out with gymnastics as a kid and then transitioned into ballet, modern dance. But even with that ballet training, it really wasn't my thing. Like I don't particularly feel inspired to dance by classical music. And so anyway, I took my training and started out with my training in dance and gymnastics, evolved into me having an opportunity to begin working in nightclubs as a pole dancer. And that's how I started when I was 18 years old. And I did that full time until I was about 23. When I was 23, I don't remember what happened, but there was one day where I had an epiphany of awareness where I was able to contribute some personal healing I had experienced, that I contributed to the freedom of expression that I had through dance, which inspired me to start just exploring if other people had experienced this. I had no idea at that time that there was a thing called sacred dance. I had no idea. I was just going on my own personal realization that I had experienced healing through freedom of expression in dance. So around that same time, I was in a metaphysical bookstore one day and ran across this book called Magical Dance by Ted Andrews. He is a metaphysical author. He's passed on now, but he wrote many, many, many books. I found his book and I gravitated to it. I bought the book that day. And in that book, it talks about ancient dance practices such as Middle Eastern dance and Indian dance as having origins in spiritual practices. And so then I dove right into, I started learning belly dance, I started learning Indian dance, and immediately fell in love with not only the music and the movement styles, but the history of these ancient styles of dance being connected to practices that support spiritual connection. And, you know, that was it. I just, you know, my whole life became consumed with that by about like 1993, 94, something like that. Mm-hmm.
So you had already sort of added the spiritual layer before you got into belly dance, or the other way around? Okay.
Yes. And then belly dance gave me a framework for it. At the same time, it was interesting. I had a little bit of a shift in my life where I had injured my shoulder. I don't know what happened, but I woke up one day in excruciating pain. I was working as a professional dancer then. So anyway, long story short, doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. I had x-rays, chiropractor, all of that. But for like 6 months, I lost total mobility in this arm so bad that like I couldn't even wash my hair. Like to wash my hair, I had to pick up this arm with this arm. So last ditch effort, I started yoga as like a therapy for myself. And so this all coincided at the same time. I began my journey with yoga. I began my journey with belly dance. I began my journey with Indian classical dance, which is considered to be a form of yoga. And after, like at first of doing yoga as a therapy for my shoulder, I couldn't do any down dogs or anything that required any type of pressure on this arm. But after 6 months, whatever I was doing in yoga completely cured me and it never came back. So I was like, okay, to this day, I've never stopped doing yoga and just continued on my journey with belly dance. I started taking technique classes in belly dance and shifted my dance, my performance career to exclusively belly dance, which I've done for many, many years. But even within that, for me, even though I've always loved dancing, I had an innate understanding of a purpose within me to be on a spiritual path. So the two just really sort of blended together. So me working as a dancer was more of an easy way for me to make a good income while I was pursuing my metaphysical studies.
But you started in the, I mean, you already had quite a background in metaphysics from your mother, right? I mean,
Yes.
that maybe you didn't, maybe it wasn't so conscious or intentional, but definitely from what you say,
Yes.
she had laid the groundwork there.
Yes. And you know, since I was a very small child, I just had an innate, um, I don't share this with everyone, but when I was 5 years old, I had an awareness that my inspiration in life was to do what I can do to become as awake and aware spiritually as I can for the sake of my own soul and for the sake of helping others. But, you know, back then, metaphysical teachings weren't as available as they are today, right? So it was like, you know, kind of sketchy, my early development. And then as life progressed and things became more, I mean, there wasn't even internet then, you know, so
Yes.
it was still like road.
I know.
So
Yes.
yeah, but this has definitely been a lifelong journey on the spiritual level and on the dance level. And so for me, being able to find, you know, when I discovered there's like a whole societies of sacred dance people that I didn't even know, that was like just perfect, you know, union or marriage of both of those things for me.
Yes, they're out there.
Yeah.
But I think people have kind of developed separately. So yeah, this is an opportunity to come together. Well, I have two questions here for you. So let me just start with one of them. So when you bring these two together, how are you doing that? I mean, how do you kind of meld those two together? What would be things you would include?
So there's two approaches. My favorite approach is just to put music on and dance however I feel. I like to organically, what I have done a lot in my life is for my own way of processing my own emotional state of being in the realm of healing, just put music on that matches how I feel so that I can completely embody the feeling, and which enables it to integrate. So let's say, for example, let's say that I'm feeling sad. Maybe I would put a song on that helps me to completely feel that sadness so that I can completely embrace it, embody it. And then through the movement of dancing through that sadness, ultimately it integrates and dissipates. And then perhaps after that, I would put a song on that matches the energy that I'm preferring to feel, like happiness or joy, so that I can completely embody that feeling. And yeah, I mean, it's been my personal main modality for emotional healing, meditation, prayer. I've had very profound experiences around having lapses of time where I thought I was dancing for 5 minutes and I was dancing for like an hour. I'm sure you've had experiences like that as well. I've had epiphanies where, you know, I'm dancing with a particular intention to maybe gain insight or information or something. And I mean, I've had very magical experiences where I've set some intentions around dancing, and then when I'm finished dancing, 5 minutes later, the phone rings with the exact information that I had been seeking. Like, maybe some of the viewers out here that are watching this can relate to that as well. But yeah, I've just had very magical experiences dancing with it organically. But then there's also the more prescribed, like, okay, if I feel like I have a blockage going on in this part of my energy system, then I'm going to specifically work with this key of music, this rhythm, this pattern of movement to restore balance specifically to this area of my energy system. So, you know, with my background in yoga, I am also a certified yoga instructor. I'm very into how it all relates to the chakras and all of that as well.
And you developed the 5 elements belly dance. So tell us a little bit about
Mhm.
that. What's that all about?
5 elements belly dance is basically utilizing belly dance movement to support awakening, activation, and balance of the 5 elements in Ayurveda, which are earth, air, fire, water, and then space. Space encompasses, I think, the energy of the higher chakras, sound, light, thought, Akashic realm. And so just utilizing different movements to activate those elements within the body, which is, of course, related to the chakras as well. And so, yeah, that might look like when I teach this, I do teach it in a weekend format. We have different segments where we're sort of moving through all of the elements.
What would you say to other belly dancers, like about adding the more spiritual layer? I mean, your students, where do you feel they come from? Are they mainly belly dancers, or are they more from the spiritual side, or
Mm-hmm.
what are your students'
Yeah, well, I've had
backgrounds?
both experiences. Originally, I'm from Northeast Ohio, and so my early dance career was performing in Arabic restaurants, not only in Ohio, but Detroit, Michigan, and more on the East Coast, which there's more prevalence of professional dancers because there's a large Arabian population in that area of the country, which I think you probably know. But now I live in Sedona, which I've lived here for like 17 years. And as you know, Sedona is sort of a remote, isolated spiritual community. And so I get a little bit of both. I mean, there's not Arabian restaurants here to perform professionally in. And so the performance opportunities are more like festivals that we have and events and things like that. I have experimented with presenting belly dance as just, dance art and learning technique, and also throwing in some of the information around the holistic aspects of belly dancing as a personal growth practice. And the feedback that I have gotten from people here in Sedona, students here in Sedona, they love when I introduce that element. But there are hardcore professional dancers that aren't really interested in that part. So to each his own, whatever. For me, I personally feel that having an awareness of the esoteric aspects of the dance, even for people who are professional performers, it will make you, I think, a more complete performer.
I think it brings more of yourself into it, but
More of your soul.
perhaps, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
perhaps
More of
there are
your
people who
soul.
don't want. I didn't have good luck with that. When
Mm,
I first started teaching in the US, some of my students booked me in places that were like belly dance, centers. And so I thought that they would appreciate like adding another layer on,
yeah.
and that wasn't it wasn't
Right.
well received. Maybe it was too soon too. Maybe this
Yeah, no,
is
I mean,
more common now, but
there's definitely a lot of performers out there that sort of turn their nose up to the energetic aspect of the dance. Again, to each his own. My personal philosophy is the more awareness you have around that, the more of your spirit shines through. For people who are performing, and the more personal benefit you gain from it. It's like after 30 some years of professional performing, I'm, retiring from performing, but dance is still very much a part of my life. I still dance at home every day, just for the joy of it, just for the movement of it, just to feel connected to my soul and my spirit. And to me, that's the important thing.
yeah, I think some people just maybe they just want to perform, or I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
That
Well, my
I can't relate to
understanding,
that, but I
yeah.
accept that that's a possibility.
And when I perform, I've always been more of an improvisational performer in my heart. I mean, I do choreograph for my students, but I prefer to improvise if I am performing, because I feel like I can let my spirit be what's guiding everything rather than just my analytical mind counting out beats and movements. And I feel that that style of performing inspires people more. I feel like whatever energy I'm radiating, if I'm dancing in front of people, that's helping the people watch me to connect with that energy within themselves. And that's what makes it a moving experience for everyone. That's my personal idea.
It makes it unique as well, I think. Because I think that can be one of the problems with choreography, is that it just sort of, maybe we want to perfect the movement, but you can lose the spontaneity of what it is, or
I call it hokey pokey belly dance. Like, put the right foot in, put the right foot out. It's like very predictable and methodical. And to me, dance is when your spirit is involved.
And I think that's something that's unique to dances like belly dance, because they are, I probably anything that originated like as a folkloric type of dance, probably that's it. Like, people were doing it to have fun and to celebrate and things like that. So I suppose it is, there's less choreography and less. But again, Western, I think that's Westernized. I mean, you've danced in Egypt, I'm sure. Why don't you talk about that? You have danced in Egypt. What's that like? I mean, how is the experience different from culturally from one place to the other?
It feels, I started traveling to the Middle East in about 2008. My first trip was in Dubai, actually. And then, excuse me, I began traveling to Egypt for dance festivals and things like that. And my experience is, because you're in the culture of where belly dance is from, there's way more of an appreciation and a celebration for what we're talking about now. My sense is Egyptian people, perhaps people throughout the Middle East in general, have more of an appreciation and honoring of dancers who dance from their spirit rather than counting out beats and moves, because there is a cultural appreciation around soulful expression where you're really just sort of being an embodiment of the music. So yeah, my experience is that there's more of an appreciation, more of an awareness. In the United States, sometimes people don't know what to think of it. There's all kinds of different, I guess it depends on the venue you're in, but sometimes people are like, what is she doing? Like,
No, it was shocking to me to find Egyptian belly dance in the States, because when I left the States, this was not something that was popular. So then I go back and people say, I do Egyptian belly dance, and I'm thinking, really? Like, where did that come from,
And of course, there's been a huge evolution in Egyptian belly dance from when I started, it was like Fifi Abdu, right? Fifi Abdu style, and which I still love her to this day. But of course, now the modern is more the Maharagan, the Shabi, and which I love also. I love that music. But the evolution of it, I think in the United States, people who think they're doing Egyptian dance aren't really doing Egyptian style.
Yeah.
They're doing more of a what they call American cabaret or whatever, and I love fusion dance myself. I mean, I've danced tribal, folkloric, everything, not knocking it. I love fusion styles, but yeah.
No, it's interesting. It's interesting to see what's out there, and and how things are presented and how things are seen from a different perspective. So
And the
Yeah.
other thing I'll say about dancing in Egypt, as you know, I think you know, I'm married. Yeah, I'm married to an Egyptian. And so I do spend a lot of time in Egypt. And aside from performing dance, just the cultural, you know, every family get together ends in music and dance. And I love that. I mean, I've been to many family gatherings with my husband's family where, you know, at the end of the night, which is actually usually 5, 6 in the morning, people are, you know, busting out the ghetto blaster, boom bat blaster, whatever, and dancing. And I've been to, you know, different types of women's gatherings. And there's, when you're in this circle of women who are all supporting each other and sharing that energy. And I know that you have experienced that a lot as well, and you're immersed in the culture. That's so joyful for me to see, you know, little 2-year-old girls dancing, teenagers, you know, mature women, older women, all dancing together. That's what I love. It's like community, it's celebration of the female spirit. And to me, that is the true essence of belly dance, aside from professional performing.
Yeah. It's about having fun.
Yes.
And I think, I mean, I hadn't ever thought about this until we had this conversation, but I would imagine that for most women here, it's probably difficult to do choreography or to count things out, because I don't think most people learn to dance in that way. It was never, I mean, Egyptians don't take belly dance classes. They
Right.
dance it at home or
Mm-hmm.
with their family or whatever. And it's a celebration. It's a way to celebrate. So,
Yeah, and
um,
it's an expression of life. I mean, people laugh when I say this, but you know, some of my current best belly dance teachers are little nieces and nephews that,
yeah.
you know, like my little 12-year-old nephew that I adore is like my shabby teacher. Like
Uh-huh. Straight to
yeah.
the source.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
exactly.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
remember with my daughter, my brother-in-law was getting married, and my daughter, I think, was a year and a half, and Dina was the dancer at the wedding. And
Oh
I
wow.
remember my daughter getting up on the table and dancing, and everybody was watching her because she was she
Uh-huh.
was as good as the belly dancer. And I just
Exactly.
like, wow, yeah, she could pretty much just stand. I mean, she was a year and a half, so I guess she'd been walking for a bit, but
Mhm.
yeah, it just starts from the very beginning and it's in you
It's
somehow.
just very much a part of the culture and what you do. Like you know, every woman in my husband's family, nobody works professionally as a dancer, but they're all amazing dancers.
Yeah. No, I think people don't think of it in that way. I mean, obviously there are professional dancers in a nightclub or something or at a wedding, but it's a people's dance. It's something that everybody
Mhm.
does. I remember when I got married, the belly dancer came up to me and I had only just arrived in Egypt and came up to me and grabbed my hands and my husband said, "She wants to dance with you." I said, "No."
Yeah.
Wants to dance with you, meaning you have
Uh,
to dance with her. So I was thrown
right.
into it in that way.
Yeah.
But now,
So,
yeah, it's beautiful to see people celebrating with music and
mhm.
yeah, just being joyful. How do you feel that your dance has evolved? Like since you started with belly dance, you already had that spiritual layer, but I'm sure that it has intensified and grown. How do you feel that it's
Mhm.
evolved over the years since you started?
For me, it's sort of like a full circle. Like you start out, it reminds me of the same process I experienced when I first started doing readings with tarot cards. So, you know, as a part of my journey, as you know, I do work as a psychic reader, started doing readings when I was 18. I got my first tarot deck when I was 17 years old, and I just started reading them intuitively. And then after a while, I was like, well, maybe I should read the book and memorize the definitions, which takes you out of your intuition, right? And so then you have this learning curve of sort of trying to meld the definitions with your intuition. My journey in dance has been the same. Started out freestyle dancing, then, okay, I need to learn the technique of belly dance, which took me out of my spirit at first, out of my intuition and in my mind and in my body to really ingrain the physical technique and the muscle memory. But now I have all of that, and that's all out the window. And it's just so much in my body that I have had this return to, I'm just dancing from my spirit. I'm not trying to execute this movement perfectly or whatever. I'm just being in my spirit. And so that's what I mean by full circle. I've arrived at, the technique is solid in my body, and I don't even care about the technique. I don't care about performing. I just want to dance for the sake of the joy of dancing. And if people are watching me dance, then I want that joy to beneficially impact them.
But all of that must have still added, because you do go around, but it's a spiral. So you're still adding layers to that. So that must have also impacted you in another way, or added more to the dance.
Yeah. So on that level, I think that as I've grown through dance training, being that I chose to, Middle Eastern dance as my main modality, even for sacred dance, I think that the enrichment of my development came with learning a little bit more about the cultural contexts of music and things like that as well. The other thing that I love, and this is like the sacred element, and this is what I love about belly dance, and I know that you talk about this in your work too, is how the movements are connected to sacred geometry. I love that. Yeah. I love that the metaphors that come with, okay, if I'm moving in a circle, then that is metaphoric of certain things. Or if I'm moving in a spiral, or if I'm doing a vibratory movement, what am I awakening? And I really, really love that dimension as well.
And that never ends.
It never ends. And like you said, it's a spiral.
There's always more to learn. Yeah.
It's a spiral that sort of like a bird riding the thermal, waves of the air. You're spiraling up, you're spiraling down, you're really riding this wave.
Yeah. And what is there anything, I'm sure there is, at this point in time, like what would you suggest to people? I think dance is, as we know, as we both agree, is a very healing process. So what are there any things that you would suggest to people at this point in time that would help them in their own healing processes with what's going on these days?
I think I would like to share from my perspective. It's not only about healing. Healing is a part of the journey. Of course, it's maybe the beginning of the journey, but it's also about empowerment and embodiment. And especially for women, like, just because of how many in the American culture, I mean, I'm American, I was born and raised here. I can speak for the American culture that, even though there's, equality and women's rights and all of that, there's still prevalence of women not feeling empowered within themselves. And physical movement that unites mind, body, spirit, which dance does, is one of the best modalities that I feel a woman can work with. Really anyone, but I have a affinity for women's spirituality and working with women. I feel like exploring movement, creative movement, and dance as a modality for healing, empowerment, embodiment, I feel are like the benefits. So you go from, okay, now I realize that I have wounds that I need to heal. I'm using dance, I'm healing those wounds. And so what's next? Now I'm feeling empowered in myself and who I am as a soul. And I feel like I can be completely embodied. My presence can inhabit my entire body, not just this little portion of my brain, which so many people live from here up. And I'm all about being completely embodied with my presence and awareness. And dance, I feel, is like the best modality for that. So I think that's what I would contribute or share.
And I think empowerment is that's what it is. It's empowerment, meaning it's coming from inside of you as a kind of power. And so anything that embodies you, that you embody, I think is very empowering. And especially for women, we are the body, and we've lost that connection to that. I think that's another, for me, that was another reason for coming to Egypt, was to reclaim the feminine, because it is still here. The
Yes.
matriarchs are still here, that women here are empowered. I mean, they
Yes.
have no problem expressing themselves.
Yes, exactly.
You
And
know that.
I know, you know, it's
I'm
like,
always fascinated when I go to the US and people start to tell me about how, you know, about Egyptian women and how they're so repressed and all of this. And I'm thinking, you don't
no.
know. You
I
really
think
don't get it.
Egyptian men are afraid of Egyptian or
They
they
all have
should be.
mothers.
Yes.
So they know. Yeah, no, I
Mm-hmm.
think in the West, we've given our power away, and a big part of it is moving to the head.
Yes.
That our power is in our body. And so when everybody moved up into their heads, then yes, the feminine lost its power, because that's not where it resides. Not that we're not intelligent, that's not where our power resides. Our power is really in our bodies. I mean, I agree with
Mm-hmm.
you that dance is one of the best ways to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And just to do at this point in time, to do any kind of a simple dance practice, just to alleviate anxiety or to discharge energies
Mm-hmm.
and get us back in our bodies.
And for me, I feel like, and my whole life has been a journey of being in my body. I feel like it supports true presence in the now, truer sense of connection to your environment and nature, which all of that lends itself to a deeper, richer experience of life, because it's about you're not just analyzing things, but you're actually experientially involving yourself on all levels, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually.
Well, you're living, because
Mm-hmm.
you're in the now, you're in the present.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
I hope
Tim,
that is a good thing that comes out of what's happening, because we don't know what's happening next. So I hope that
mm-hmm.
people start to realize that, you know, there's no point to plan anything, because none of
Right.
us know how long we're going to be sitting at home, and that's okay. That
Mm-hmm.
let me deal with what's happening today and maybe tomorrow, and then figure the rest
Yeah.
of it out as it comes.
And just be in the now. And for any one out there who has been curious about exploring creative movement and dance as an enrichment, now's the time, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's just segue right into, what are you doing? What are you doing? Any kind of online things, or what are you doing these days and in the near future?
Yeah, so right now I am actually plotting out some plans for having some online offerings around dance. In the meantime, I do have several group retreats lined up this year here in Sedona. Many of them are centered around women's empowerment and do include movement and dance as a part of that. So that's what I'm doing now. I think the best thing would be just to direct people to my website for the
Mhm.
to look at the retreats page, which is holisticpsychic.com. I do have a more formal belly dance website, sedonabellydance.com. which is the website that I use for like weekly classes and things like that. But of course, weekly classes are not happening right now. Um, so yeah, but for people who are interested in exploring my offerings in more of like the holistic personal growth, spiritual development, feminine empowerment realm that includes movement and dance, I would recommend the Holistic Psychic website, holisticspsychic.com, because that's where I have all the retreat information listed.
And the empowerment program that you're doing, that's online, or that's going to be a live?
Live in person. I'm
Okay.
working on some online things as well during this time. This is how I'm using the time for myself, is doing some online things. But then the retreats that I have set are so that you can actually come here in person to experience the retreats. And
you have your DVD, right? The 5
yes,
elements of belly dance. So for those people who want to dance at home.
yes, and I do have an actual instructional DVD that was produced by World Dance New York called Tribe Array Bellydance. It's called Tribe Array because I'm blending elements of tribal fusion belly dance with classical belly dance. The reason I did that was because I do love all styles of dance, including tribal fusion, but for my personal taste, current tribal fusion is looking less and less like belly dance to me, right? So I was like, okay, I'm gonna fuse tribal dance with belly dance and make it a little more belly dancey. So anyway, so that's available too. You can get it on Amazon or through World Dance New York.
Okay, well, we can put links for that on the page.
Yeah.
And your free gift. You have a free gift for the listeners. Let us know what that's about.
This free gift is something that I really love. I've put a lot of attention into. It is a sacred dance awareness chart. So it's meant to be it's a chart or a diagram that compartmentalizes, let's see, I'm looking at it right now. So there's a column that is connected to, okay, what chakra you want to work with, and then the element that's connected with the chakra, metaphysical qualities connected with the chakra or the element that you're working with, the physical correlations, the musical correlations is the thing that I really love. I've studied a lot of, in my dance journey has led me into studying music therapy and sound healing as well. So in this chart, I've included musical correlations, which includes keys of music that will affect the different elements in the body connected to the different chakras, the types of musical rhythms that will affect those things, and the instruments, the instrumentation. And then there's a column that says the type of dance technique that you would utilize for those things. So I'll go ahead and just show a little flash of it now. This is what the chart looks like. This is just like a basic printout. The one people will get will be like a lot more colorful and things like that. But it makes it really easy to just look to see, okay, what do I want to work on? What music do I use? What dance movements do I use? What is this affecting in my physical body? And what are the metaphysical qualities?
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that.
Cool. It's a product of many years of research that I've done and many years of experiencing or experimenting with what I've learned and how it all works.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us today, and for your free gift that people will be able to use at home. So thank you for being here.
And thank you so much for having me. And again, thank you for all that you do in sacred dance. You've definitely been like a huge inspiration for me in my life. And so thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. And thank you to the listeners. Download that PDF so you can add some more layers to your dance.
Yes.
All right.
All right. Blessings.